Welcome to SciTech Culture with Steve Kern and Ben Warner, where we examine science, technology and culture in the 21st century. Visit our website at scitechculture.com. Hello and welcome to SciTech Culture. My name is Ben Warner and I'm joined once again by my good friend and colleague Steve Kern to talk about Mark Zuckerberg again and Facebook, given we did speak about it recently, but since then he's gone in front of Congress to answer questions and what else. We're just talking about the fact that, I was just watching The Social Network a little earlier, and although it's been claimed that a lot of it isn't really factually accurate, I wonder if the tone isn't spot on based on what we saw in the Congress hearings this past week.
Yeah, well, I always suspected the Social Network probably got it right in terms of personality. Very interesting week. I mean, Zuckerberg finishing up in front of the US Senate really now is the culmination of people looking to find someone to blame for Trump. That's effectively what it is. And I think because of that, it's actually missing what should be really happening here. But having said that, perhaps, Ben, we've spoken about this for years, but perhaps this is finally the breach, the data breach, that will bring regulation and change the way people see the internet.
Mm-hmm. Well, for just a bit of context, the Sydney Morning Herald actually did a pretty good summary of it, which is like for the past 14 years, Mark Zuckerberg was free to use any means he could imagine to build his social network into an internet and advertising colossus with tens of billions of dollars in revenue. But now the United States Congress and the world is waking up to what that freedom meant for Facebook users. And leaving aside the fact that a lot of those, a lot of the people asking the questions, shall we say, probably weren't up on how a social network works or even how the internet works.
We've had 14 years to log into Facebook. I don't think any of those people are on there. I think their staff might have posted pictures of them and do the occasional post, but
yeah, they've got no idea. But it has led to the backlash. Obviously this these hearings highlight even further, and it obviously causes a greater problem for him that there was like a delete Facebook movement that started out of this, and it's I don't know if it's completely shattered everyone's illusions into Facebook, but I think there might be a good chunk of people now that might be questioning whether they should be using Facebook. Obviously, there's still going to be a lot of people that'll just continue using it anyway. But I've heard more and more people, even if they don't necessarily delete their account because of this, and maybe this is just fatigue and the fact that it's just not as fun as it used to be. That I think that plays a factor too. That people have just stopped using it, at least for personal use. Whether they use it for their own, Facebook pages for advertising their stuff or whatever, that's another thing. But because the crucial thing here in this story is about the personal information that you put up and what Facebook is doing.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. Just on that point you're raising, I think Facebook probably have gone too far towards advertising anyway, and I think that's what it's become. It's become an advertising platform, and if anything, that's probably what's jaded a lot of people's usage of it. I think the really scary thing is no one actually has talked about what this data breach means. Now, it's got nothing to do with the fact that it meant that some fake news went to some people that might have voted another way, which I don't necessarily believe that's true anyway. But, sure, there's meddling in elections. That's one way to do it. And Facebook have staunchly, for the last, ever since they went public anyway, refused to, censor or monitor any material or content posted under the guise that if they did, they'd become a media company, and if they become a media company, they'd be open to regulation. So they've been very lax there. But the truth is not that data was taken to feed people information. The fact is that data now exists somewhere. So people have access to a snapshot of people's lives, and it could be 3 or 4 years worth of data about them, how they react to certain stories, all sorts of information about how they think, and what they're likely to do in a given circumstance. That's the sort of data breach that would scare me, because that means then 10 years' time, people can look at the data that they took from Facebook, run some artificial intelligence over it, and know that if they present you with a particular option or stimulus, they'll probably be able to guess how you're going to react, and you'll be able to be manipulated.
Yeah, and that's I guess that's where we're going to with this. Just as a side sort of segue, and we can go back to Facebook because it kind of ties into this as well, is that, again, I was watching a documentary about the Trump campaign and how they use Twitter in particular. Now, this is obviously Twitter's Twitter, so it's a different platform, but still social media. And they specifically would start monitoring the retweets and messages that on every tweet that Trump put out during the campaign. And then if they started to see a pattern, and this was all manual, so they weren't doing it, with a fancy computer algorithm or anything like that. Basically, one of them was just saying, if a particular idea hit 100 retweets, they'd put it in the book, and then they'd start to work on it. So, and that's where Build the Wall came from. That sort of thing. So it's ironic that, what we're talking about with Facebook, that sounds fairly unsophisticated, to be honest. But it worked for them. They clearly were able to get, a whole bunch of people to vote for them that may not have voted at all. But in the case of the Facebook thing, which seems to be more sophisticated in that you're getting, sort of computer algorithms in to sort of analyze big data in essence, mammoth amounts of data to try and fix things. That, I think, is where the overreach happens, and this is where the outrage occurs, because if, you're just a couple of guys, monitoring some tweets in the background, how's that different to monitoring poll results or surveys or anything like that? That's not really different. But here, and on top of that, people know that they've actually submitted that information publicly, whereas in Facebook, the implicit thing is that it's all private. Again, Social Network covers this perfectly on 2 points. It's an exclusive platform. You don't talk to people unless you allow them in.
Yeah.
And the best part is, as the Justin Timberlake character said, as soon as you put advertising in, you kill the party, which I would say is exactly what happened as soon as they went public a few years back.
Yeah, it's a shame, the advertising bit, because it could actually be a really good advertising platform. But Facebook's a victim of its own success. Firstly, it's always inflated and claimed, I've always thought, and there has been some evidence of this, very dodgy figures about their interactions with advertising. But also it's dirt cheap to reach these astronomical figures by comparison, say, with free-to-air TV. So it means that it's had that hole, but all it's done is killed the goose with the golden egg, by basically now, if you don't post anything yourself and just sit there and watch your feed occasionally when you log in, then you'll see very quickly it's just consumed by ads. I actually haven't been back on Facebook for a few months now, so I don't know what it's doing at the moment, but I might go back and check and see what...
No, that's effective. That's effectively what it is, really. That you're seeing lots of junk, but it leads me to think: is their business model fundamentally flawed? Because if you think of what the original intention for the site was to get people, it wasn't really this ad-based or monetization aspect to it. Facebook actually works when you get, you don't call them real interactions, but if you get people interacting without ads in the way and without people trying to figure out patterns of posting or whatever, if it's just you and your group of Facebook friends interacting, and that's what it was in the beginning, then it works just fine. And the transition to making money, that doesn't translate. So is it fundamentally flawed?
Well, it is, and interesting you say that. The original Facebook was you and your group of friends interacting with everyone else potentially on Facebook. That's not possible now because they wind back your ability to interact, because then otherwise it'd just be free advertising. So they've killed this online community bringing people together is really just, that's a line from 10 years ago. It does no such thing at all. It's just an ad delivery system.
Yeah.
If you don't want to call it a media company. Yeah. And it's an ad delivery system that will actually supply you and your Facebook group of friends with the ads that you want to see. So it basically homogenises your group and analyses your group and then feeds your group the same, pulp, advertising that is monetized, and it's not a healthy or exciting environment. And I think there's a good point there going back to the Napster reference, because somewhere in there they've taken what is quite a good business model and just not really understood it. And I mean, if we go then back to the social network, would anyone there at Facebook today really understand what their people want, or do they just understand what their advertisers want?
Yeah, exactly. To round this out and to sort of finalize it, in watching Zuckerberg and giving his testimony, booster seat aside, the thing that struck me is whether it's pressure or whatever, he likens himself to being another Steve Jobs, another Bill Gates, but you can just fundamentally see that either he needs a lot of work to improve his ability to project his person in public, or because he just doesn't come across as a guy who, one, is likable, or two, he doesn't even necessarily need to be likable. You just need to feel like he's on top of it. And and it doesn't feel, and this whole saga feels like he's not on top of it, and the reaction is really just, oh crap, we got to do something because somebody's pointed it out, rather than they identified it internally and said, oh no, we have to do something about this. This is something serious.
Well, Zuckerberg and Facebook have been arrogant in all their existence, and it's interesting to note that both Steve Jobs posthumously has been termed a genius, which I don't think there's any evidence that he ever was a genius. If you're looking for a genius, maybe was, but definitely not Steve.
Maybe a marketing genius, but nothing else.
Well, he certainly had a knack of getting the right people into those positions. But anyway, Bill Gates is actually probably rising in people's estimates over the last couple of decades, but I don't think anyone will call him a genius either. And I think in comparison to either of those two, Zuckerberg doesn't even rate. He's done nothing at all. And if you actually watch the social network, you'll see that really the key people in developing Facebook were people along the way who aren't at the company today. He just happens to be, because he termed the social network Facebook.
Yeah, that's right. Maybe we can finish on this final thought that the Winklevi might be feeling vindicated after all this time, especially after they cashed in their $1 billion worth of Bitcoin last year or the year before.
Hard done by in the social network.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. All right, Steve, we'll wrap it up there. So don't forget to check out our website, SciTechCulture.com. You can get all of our links and content there. We've got our YouTube and Vimeo channel, so you can watch us as well and subscribe to our content. And we greatly appreciate if you visit our website, and hope you enjoy the content. All right, so that's it for this episode. We'll catch you next time.